Hello and welcome everyone to a new live lesson, a new English lesson that's given to you live, and that's on your channel Dual Knowledge. Sorry for what happened at the beginning of the live. I was trying to stream horizontally, but for some reason my phone doesn't accept me putting it in the horizontal position. I'd like to have the live stream horizontally, but for some reason, whenever I place it horizontally in front of me, it asks me to reorient the phone vertically or to position the phone vertically so that I can start the live stream. Anyway, so today we'll have another grammar lesson, just like the one we had in the last live lesson, which was the very first live lesson. In the last lesson, we talked about the topic of inversions, and we explained the function of inversions, how to make inversions, when and why and where do we use inversions. And I hope that you benefited from our last live lesson or our last live session. And today is the second live lesson or the second live session, in which we will be also tackling or addressing some advanced grammar. So the grammar that we are going to tackle today in today's lesson is a bit advanced, and it is about three topics. The first one is using the word there, and that's spelled T-H-E-R-E. So be careful because there are many there in English. There is there, that's they are. There is there, that's the possessive pronoun, T-H-E-I-R. But these are not the theirs. These are not the theirs I would like to talk about today. No, the there, which I'd like to discuss and explain today, is the there that's spelled T-H-E-R-E. T-H-E-R-E. So the first section of my live today will be about explaining there. The second part will be about using introductory it. And when we come to this, we'll say in detail what I mean by that. And then in the third section and the last section of today's live lesson, I will be explaining the concept of cleft sentences. Right, so let's begin with there. So what is the function of there in English? Again, I'm talking about there that's spelled T-H-E-R-E. There is used in writing or in speaking to introduce a person or a thing that we are referring to for the very first time in our writing or in our speech. So when I say, for instance, there is a cinema near my house. There is a cinema near my house. Using there in this sentence means that I haven't mentioned the cinema before. It's the very first time in my speech or in my writing, depends if I'm writing or speaking, it's the first time that I mention the cinema, that I refer to the cinema. So the function of there is to refer to somebody or something for the very first time in your writing or in your speaking. Normally, the word there is followed by verb to be. I'm talking here about all forms of verb to be. It can be verb to be in the present, like am, is, or are. It can be a verb to be in the past, was or were. But in all cases, there is normally and most usually followed by verb to be. So, for example, we say, just like in the example I have just mentioned, there is a cinema near my house. There is, that's verb to be, a cinema near my house, that's the rest of the sentence. However, sometimes verb to be and there can be separated by an auxiliary verb. In our last live lesson, we talked about auxiliary verbs and we said what the functions of them is or what the functions of them are, and at the same time which verbs in English are deemed or are considered to be auxiliary verbs. We talked about verbs to be, to have, to do, and the modal verbs. So this is what I'm saying in today's point here. Instead of having verb to be coming directly after there, no, we could have an auxiliary verb separating them. It could be an auxiliary verb from be or from have or do, because be is already there in a sentence, or it could be a modal. For example, and I have some notes here with me, we can say, there has been a recent surge in house prices. There has been a recent surge in house prices. As you can see, There has been means that the auxiliary verb has separates there from verb to be. The sentence says there has been, meaning that between there and between verb to be in its past participle form, and that's been, we have the auxiliary verb has. So the sentence again says there has been a recent surge in house prices. So this is an exemplification of how an auxiliary verb can separate the word there from verb to be. Let's have another example in which a modal verb separates the word there from verb to be. We can say, there must be some way of contacting him. There must be some way of contacting him. As you can see, there must be, meaning that the modal verb must is separating the word there from verb to be in its bare infinitive form, which is be. So we say again in the sentence, there must be some way of contacting him. Right, so you might have there followed by verb to be immediately, and that's the most usual case. Or you could have the word there separated from verb to be either with an auxiliary verb like have, or separated from there by a modal verb like must in the example we have just mentioned. There is also another case in which you can have a verb separating there from verb to be. In this case, we have to be in the form of the to infinitive, which is to be. Some of these verbs include, and they are not comprehensive here, this is just a small list of verbs which might separate there from verb to be. We have the verb used, we have the verb tend, appear, and seem. Let me say them again. Used, seem, appear, and tend. Let me give you some examples to highlight this. So we can say, there seems to be a major disagreement between the two parties. There seems to be. There seems to be. As you can see, the verb seem separates the word there from verb to be in its to infinitive form. So we say there seems to be or there appears to be. In this context or in this sense, appear and seem are synonyms. They have the same meaning, so they are interchangeable. You can use whichever of them you want. So we can say there seems to be or there appears to be a major disagreement, a major dispute between the two parties. As you can see, according to the noun that follows verb to be, we conjugate the verb between there and verb to be. In this example, which I have just mentioned, the noun after to be is a major disagreement. A major disagreement, and that's a singular noun. So we dealt with it as if it's replaceable by the pronoun it. So we said there seems or there appears. If it were disagreements, like in the plural sense, I mean, we should have said there seem to be or there appear to be major disagreements between the two parties. And this takes me to a very important point. Whenever we use verb to be after the word there, we use a form of verb to be that agrees with the noun following it. So, if the noun following verb to be is a singular noun, we use is or was according to the tense of the sentence being present or past. If the noun after verb to be is plural, I use either the form were or the form are from verb to be according to the tense of the sentence as well. So we say, there is a cinema near my house, just in the example I mentioned minutes ago. There is a cinema or there was a cinema, because the noun that follows verb to be here is singular, and that's a cinema. But when you say a lot of people in the underground or a lot of people on the underground, we say there are a lot of people on the underground or there were a lot of people on the underground, because a lot of people is a plural noun that follows verb to be, so we must use a form of verb to be that agrees with the noun after it being singular or plural. So we say there are or there were a lot of people, because a lot of people is plural, or we say there is or there was a cinema, because a cinema is a singular noun, so we use either the form is or was according to the tense of the sentence. However, in spoken English or in conversations, we can use a singular verb, a singular form of verb to be, even if the noun after it is plural. Let's look at this example, for instance. We can say, there's some apples on the table. There is some apples on the table. As you can see, the noun after verb to be is plural, that's some apples. However, in spoken informal English, we can use the form is, or the singular form of verb to be is, saying, there is some apples on the table. There is some apples on the table. Normally and grammatically, we should say there are some apples on the table. However, because that's an informal context, conversational English or spoken English, we can use the singular form of verb for facilitation or for simplicity. So we say there is some apples on the table rather than saying there are some apples on the table. Let me take a sip of tea. Right. So sometimes we might have a list of items after verb to be. This list of items contains of some nouns. Some of them are singular and others are plural. Which form of verb to be should I use? In other words, if there is only one noun after verb to be, I shall use a form of verb to be that agrees with that noun being singular or plural. What if I have a series or a list of items or a list of nouns after verb to be, and that list contains singular nouns and plural nouns? Should I use a singular form of verb to be or a plural form? The fact of the matter is that we use a form of verb to be that agrees with the first noun in the series. I have some examples here ready for you. I can say, when I opened the fridge, there was a bottle of milk, some eggs and butter. So, when I opened the fridge, there was a bottle of milk, some eggs and butter. As you can see, the list contains 3 items: a bottle of milk, some eggs, and butter. But what's the first item in the list? It's a bottle of milk. So I have to use a singular form of verb to be, because a bottle of milk is a singular noun phrase. So we say, there was a bottle of milk. But if we put the item some eggs as the first item in the list, so we should say, when I opened the fridge, there were some apples, a bottle of milk, and butter. So the form of verb to be that we use depends on the first item in the list. If it's singular, use a singular form of verb to be. And if it's plural, use a plural form of verb to be. Another pattern that's pretty common with the word there and verb to be after it is to have a noun after verb to be and then to have a clause. In the last lesson, we talked about what a clause is, and quickly I'm going to recapitulate on that. A clause is a group of words containing a subject and a verb. Again, if you have a group of words, this group of words contains a subject and a verb, it's a clause. And this clause could be dependent, which means that it cannot stand alone. It needs another clause to complete the meaning. Or it can be an independent clause, meaning that it represents a sentence in itself. So in my lesson here, there is a very important point that I have to point up to or to flag up. And that's after there and verb to be, which comes after there, we can have a noun and then a clause. It can be any type of clause. It can be a participle clause, that clause, a to infinitive clause, or even a WH clause. And I have jotted down some examples for you here. So I can say, for instance, there is a chance that Kim arrives today. There is a chance that Kim arrives today. There is, that's verb to be, a chance, that's the noun, and then the that clause after it, which is that Kim arrives today. We can also have another example saying, there is no reason why I can't see you tomorrow. There is no reason why I can't see you tomorrow. So as you can see, we started our sentence with there, followed by verb to be, that's is, and then the noun, reason, and then the WH clause, which is why I can't see you tomorrow. So in these two examples, in the first one, we followed the noun with a that clause, and in the second example, we followed the noun with a WH clause. We can also have another example like this. There was a taxi waiting outside the hotel. There was a taxi waiting outside the hotel. There was is verb to be, a taxi, that's the noun, and then the participle clause beginning with the present participle, waiting outside the hotel. And then another example to highlight an exemplification of using a to infinitive after the noun. We could say, there was an attempt to resolve the dispute at the factory. There was is another form of verb to be in the past. An attempt, that's the noun, to resolve the dispute at the factory. So we are following the noun here with a to infinitive. The final point in the first section of today's live about there is using the phrase there being. And that's a very useful structure to use in your writing. When you begin your sentence or your clause with the phrase there being, this means that it means because. You use there being to provide the reason for something. So when you begin your clause or when you begin your sentence with the phrase there being, it means that you're providing the reason for something or you're providing the cause of something in your sentence. For instance, we can say, there being no evidence against him, there being, as you can see, it's at the beginning of the sentence, there being no evidence against him, he was released, which means because there was no evidence against him, he was released. So there being here in this particular sentence gave us the meaning of because there being as a phrase functions as a phrase that gives you or provides you with the reason or the cause, the reason for something or the cause of something. Right, so this is the first section in today's live, talking about there, how to use it, what to put after it, being verb to be, being an auxiliary, a modal, or even the different types of clauses that we can use after there, in addition to using the phrase there being in your writing particularly, because it's pretty formal, in order to provide the reason for something or the cause of something. Now, we are going to move to the second section of today's live, and that's about using introductory it. Well, normally, it as a pronoun is used to refer to something rather than a person. So we say, for instance, I like this bottle, it looks beautiful. I like this bottle, it looks beautiful. So it here is a pronoun, a personal pronoun or a subject pronoun that refers to something, this thing in this particular or certain example being the bottle, right? But this is not the it I'm talking about today. The it we are going to have explained today is called introductory it. So we begin our sentence with it, with this it, and it doesn't necessarily refer to something physical or something concrete. It can be referring to something abstract or to something metaphorical. For example, look at this example. When I say, it is illegal to drive without a license. So using it in this particular sentence is an exemplification of using introductory it. It refers to the concept, the idea, the notion that it's illegal to drive without a license. It refers to the idea that driving without a license is not allowed, is forbidden. So an introductory it is used at the beginning of the sentence to refer to something abstract or to refer to something figurative rather than something literal, something physical, or something concrete, right? So when should we use or when can we use introductory it at the beginning of a sentence? Well, we use introductory it when the subject of the sentence is a to infinitive clause or a that clause or a participle clause or an I or a WH clause. Again, so introductory it is used instead of some subjects if these subjects are a to infinitive clause, a that clause, a WH clause, or a participle clause. I'll give you several examples to highlight this right now. So when I say that she wasn't hurt is a miracle, again, that she wasn't hurt is a miracle. The subject here is the that clause at the beginning of the sentence, and that's that she wasn't hurt. Because the subject here is a that clause, we can replace it with an introductory it. So we can rephrase the sentence by saying, it's a miracle that she wasn't hurt. Another example, to drive without a license is illegal. To drive without a license is illegal. We have the subject in this sentence as the to infinitive clause, which is to drive without a license. So to drive without a license is illegal. Because the subject is a to infinitive clause, we can replace it with an introductory it. So we say, it is illegal to drive without a license. So in these two examples, we replace the subjects with an introductory it. In the first example, the subject was a that clause, and in the second example, the subject was a to infinitive clause. The third example is, why Don decided to leave Spain is clear. Let me say it again. Why Don is a man. Why Don decided to leave Spain is clear. So the subject in this sentence is the WH clause, why Don decided to leave Spain. So we can replace it with an introductory it by saying, it is clear why Don decided to leave Spain. So in this example, we have replaced the subject, which is the which is the WH clause, why Don decided to leave Spain. We replaced it with an introductory it. And the last example in this point is as follows. Asking Sue to help is useless. Asking Sue to help is useless. The subject in this sentence is the participle clause, asking Sue to help. So we can replace it with an introductory it by saying, it is useless. It is useless to ask Sue to help. So the précis of this point, or the summary of this point, is that we use an introductory it at the beginning of the sentence to replace certain types of subjects. Literally or specifically, these are that clauses, WH clauses, to infinitive clauses, and participle clauses. However, we do not use an introductory it in order to replace the subject if the subject is a noun. So let's look at this example, which I have jotted down here for you. We can say, this ice cream tastes really good. This ice cream tastes really good. The subject here is this ice cream, and that's a noun or a noun phrase. We cannot use an introductory it in this case, unless it's an informal, conversational, spoken context. So we can say, it tastes really good, this ice cream. it tastes really good, this ice cream. So as you can see, in this particular example, the subject is the noun or the noun phrase, this ice cream. In conversational contexts, we can put an introductory it at the beginning of the sentence and delay the noun or the noun phrase to later in a sentence. So we say, it tastes really good, this ice cream, rather than saying, this ice cream tastes really good. Also, we can use an introductory it when the subject of the sentence is a noun phrase, if that noun phrase is too long. So we can say, for example, all the bureaucracy involved in running school these days is ridiculous. Again, all the bureaucracy, the red tape, the governmental routine, all the bureaucracy involved in running schools these days is ridiculous. The subject in this sentence is a very lengthy noun phrase. It's as follows. All the bureaucracy involved in running schools these days. As you can see, it's a very long subject. So we can replace this very long subject with an introductory it, and we delay this long noun phrase later in a sentence. So we say, it's ridiculous, all the bureaucracy involved in running schools these days. And by the way, whenever we use an introductory it to replace a noun or a noun phrase as the subject of a sentence, we separate it with a comma. So we say, it tastes really good, comma, this ice cream. So after delaying the noun, this ice cream, to later in a sentence, we separate it from the introductory it clause with a comma. In the second example, it should be, in the written form, it should be, it's ridiculous, comma, all the bureaucracy involved in running schools these days. So whenever you use an introductory it to replace a noun or a noun phrase as a subject, you have to separate the introductory it clause from the noun or the noun phrase that's been deferred until later in a sentence. You have to separate them in terms of punctuation or writing with a comma. Sometimes it is not introductory. No, sometimes it is used as an object. So if you use it as an object, you can follow it with a multitude of clauses. You can follow it with an if clause, or with a that clause, a WH clause, or you can even follow it with an adjective phrase or a noun phrase, followed by a WH clause, or a to infinitive clause, or a that clause. Let's look at some examples that underscore this point. So we can say, for instance, and I have some examples jotted down here for you that I have prepared before going live. You can say, I hate it that you can swim so well and I can't. I hate it that you can swim so well and I can't. As you can see, it is an object. I hate it. That's the object. And then it's followed by a that clause. I hate it that you can swim so well and I can't. Another example. We always enjoy it when you stay with us. We always enjoy it when you stay with us. So after the object it, we always enjoy it when you stay with us. As you can see, the clause that comes after it is a WH clause. I understand it if you can't attend the funeral. I understand it, that's it, which acts as an object here. I understand it if you can't attend the funeral. So in these three examples, and respectively, we followed it, which is acting as an object, with a that clause, a WH clause, or an if clause. As I said a couple of minutes ago, it can also be followed, I'm talking here about it which acts as an object, it can also be followed with an adjective phrase or a noun phrase, like in these examples. We can say, officials believe it unlikely that any damage to the environment has been done. As you can see, officials believe it, which means that the pronoun it acts as an object here, and then we're following it with a that clause. So the sentence says, officials believe it unlikely, that's the adjective, and then the that clause, that any damage to the environment has been done. We can also say, in another example, I thought it a waste of money to throw away so much food. Again, I thought it is an object here. I thought it a waste of money, that's the noun phrase, a waste of money to throw away so much food. So in these examples, we flagged up the fact that we can follow the it, which acts as an object, with either an adjective phrase or a noun phrase, and then we follow them with a to infinitive clause, a WH clause, or a that clause. In these two cases particularly, I'm talking here about following the object it with an adjective or a noun. We can use the word as. For instance, we can say, we see it as an insult to receive no reply to our letter. We see it here acts as an object. We see it as an insult. So an insult is the noun phrase followed by as to receive no reply to our letter. It's followed by a to infinitive clause. Another example, I take it as encouraging when students attend all my lectures. I take it acts as an object here, as encouraging is the adjective, when students attend all my lectures, so it's followed by a WH clause, as we can see. Also, another two important expressions employing it as an object is when you say, I leave it to somebody to do something. I leave it as an object here, to somebody to do something, or I owe it to somebody to do something. When you say, I owe it to somebody to do something, means that you swear that you're going to do that thing, means that you vow that you're going to do that thing. For example, we can say, don't bother to arrange anything, just leave it to me to sort out. Leave it, so it acts as an object here. Leave it to me, to somebody, and that's me, to sort out. So leave it to somebody to do something. Owe, on the other hand, which means to swear or to vow or to take it as a personal responsibility that you have to fulfill. I'll give you an example with it. She owed it to her parents to do well at college. She owed it to her parents, which means that she vowed, that she swore to her parents to do well at college or at university. So you owe it to somebody, or you leave it to somebody to do something. These are two very common expressions in which we employ the pronoun it as an object. Now I'll give you some very useful expressions to use in your speaking or in your writing using introductory it and introductory there. Because so far we have been talking about the word there and the word it. So in the first section of the live video or the live stream today, we talked about the word there, and then in the second section in which we are right now, we're talking about the pronoun it when it's used as an introductory word in sentences. The tea has gone cold. Right. So I'll give you now some expressions, some useful expressions to use in your speaking and writing, starting with the introductory it, and then I'll follow them with some useful expressions for reading and writing, for speaking and writing, that begin with the word there. So let's begin with the expressions that begin with it. You can say, it's no use or it's no good doing something. So when you say, it's no good or it's no use advising Sam, he never listens, which means there is no point in doing that. So it's no use or it's no good. They have the same meaning. This means that there is no point in doing that. There is no advantage from doing that. So it's no point, it's no good or it's no use doing something. You can also say, it is no secret that. It is no secret that. For example, you say, it's no secret that Anne and Robert have split up. Everyone knows. It's no secret that Anne and Robert have split up, everyone knows. The fourth one is, it's no surprise that. Example, it's no surprise that we lost the match. We weren't prepared well. Again, it's no surprise that we lost the game or that we lost the match. We weren't prepared well. The fifth one is, it's no coincidence or it's no accident that. And the last one, it's no longer plus an adjective. So you say, for example, it's no longer possible to stream videos on YouTube, for example, streaming a video right now. So when you say it's no longer possible to stream videos on YouTube, this means that this was allowed in the past and it's not allowed now. So the 6 expressions which I have listed, beginning with the introductory it, are, it's no good doing something, it's no use doing something, it's no surprise that, it's no secret that, it's no accident or coincidence that, and finally, it's no longer plus an adjective. So these are 6 useful expressions that you can use in your speaking or in your writing, which begin with the introductory it. Now I'll move on to the group of expressions which can be very useful for you in speech and writing, and they begin with there. You can say, there is no hope of doing something, or there is no chance of doing something. There is no hope of doing something, or there is no chance of doing something. You can say there is no reason to, or there is no need to hurry. For example, you can say there is no reason to hurry, or there is no need to hurry. So we have there is no chance of, there is no hope of doing something, of course. After that, we have the gerund or the ing form. You can say there is no reason to, or there is no need to. You can say there is no denying that, there is no denying that prices have gone very high. There is no denying that prices have gone very high. So this is something that cannot be denied because it's crystal clear. The sixth one is there is no point in doing something, and this is similar to saying it's no good or it's no use doing something. So you can say it's no good advising Robert, it's no use advising Robert, or there is no point in advising Robert. And the last expression that begins with there is there is no alternative or choice but to. There is no alternative, or there is no choice but to, and then we follow it with the infinitive of the verb. Right, so this is the second section of my live stream today. The very first section was talking about using the word there and how to use it with the verb to be and with different types of clauses. And then in the second section of the live stream, we have been for a while talking about using introductory it. Now we move on to the third and the final section of the live stream today, and that's about cleft sentences. So cleft sentences is an advanced structure of sentences or an advanced form of sentences. It can either begin with it or with what. So cleft sentences either begin with the pronoun it or with what. But they have certain fixed structures. Let's tackle the first type, which begins with it. A cleft sentence that begins with it will have verb to be after it, and then we'll have a noun or a noun phrase after that, followed by a relative clause. A relative clause is a clause that begins with one of the relative pronouns, like who, which, whom, whose, and so on. So when I say, it was Tom who bought the car from Helen. It was Tom who bought the car from Helen. So as you can see, the cleft sentence is beginning with it, followed by verb to be, which is in the form of the past here, was. It was somebody, and that's Tom. Then the relative clause, who bought the car from Helen. Another example. It was the blue rucksack which I lost. It was it plus verb to be, the blue rucksack, that's the noun phrase, which I lost. That's the relative clause, beginning with the relative pronoun which. Another example, you can say, It was last year when he turned professional. It was last year when he turned professional. It was, it plus verb to be, last year, that's the noun phrase, followed by the relative pronoun when, and then the rest of the relative clause, when he turned professional. A last example for the cleft sentences beginning with it is Spain where we're spending the holiday. It's Spain, it is, it plus verb to be, Spain, that's the noun, where we are spending the holiday. So that's the relative clause beginning with the relative pronoun where. So a cleft sentence that begins with it has the following structure. It at the beginning of the sentence, verb to be, somebody or something, a noun phrase, and then a relative clause that begins with a relative pronoun. So this is the first sort of cleft sentences beginning with the pronoun it. The second type of cleft sentences begins with the word what, and it takes the following structure. What plus an optional subject plus verb plus an optional object followed by verb to be. Again, you begin the cleft sentence with what, you follow it with an optional subject, and then a verb, but the verb is necessary, it's integral, it's an integral part of the sentence here. We follow it with an optional object, and then we follow it with verb to be. Let's have some examples. When you say, what we gave them was some cake. What we gave them was some cake. As you can see, what, then the subject, we, then the verb, which is necessary and essential for the sentence, gave, then the object, them, then verb to be, was some cake. Again, what we gave them was some cake. That's an example of a cleft sentence that begins with the word what. Another example, when you can say, what I want you to solve is exercise 3. Again, what I want you to solve is exercise 3. So as you can see, the cleft sentence here begins with what, followed by the subject I, and then the verb want, then the object you, to solve is, that's verb to be, is exercise 3. So a cleft sentence that begins with what takes the following pattern: what plus subject plus verb plus object plus verb to be. The subject and the object are optional, but the verb to be is an intrinsic part to the sentence. It's essential. We cannot do without it. The verb after what. However, we can reverse the order of the cleft clause by saying, what upset me was his rudeness. This is a cleft sentence. What upset me was his rudeness. As you can see, what, there is no subject. What acts as the subject here. What upset, verb, me, object, was, verb to be, his rudeness. We can reverse the order of the two clauses by saying, his rudeness was what upset me. His rudeness was what upset me. This means that you can have the cleft sentence, or you can have the cleft part of the sentence postponed or deferred until later in the sentence. So in this case, it's not a cleft sentence anymore, because to have a cleft sentence, as I said, it must begin either with it or with what. And there is a very famous form of cleft sentences beginning with what. Then that's when you say, what somebody do or does is to do something. I'll give you an example. When I say, what he did was to sell his flat. What he did was to sell his flat. So as you can see, the cleft sentence here begins with the word what, followed by the subject he, followed by verb to do in the past simple form, which is did. So what he did was, and that's the past simple form of verb to be, and then we follow it with the to infinitive saying to sell his flat. But be careful that the word to here is also optional. You can leave it out. You can omit it from the sentence. So instead of saying what he did was to sell his flat, you could say What he did was sell his flat. What he did was sell his flat. This means, again, to recapitulate briefly on the part of cleft sentences, a cleft sentence is an advanced type of sentences that you should use in your speaking or in your writing in order to sound native-like and to have some authentic and advanced command of English. How do you make cleft sentences? You either begin them with the pronoun it or with the word what. If you begin it with the pronoun it takes the following form: it plus verb to be plus noun or noun phrase plus a relative clause. Example, it was the blue rucksack which I lost. That's a cleft sentence beginning with the pronoun it. The second kind of cleft sentences is to begin them with what. For example, you say, what we gave them was some cake. As you can see, the form of the cleft sentence beginning with what, or the structure, the grammatical form or pattern of it is what plus subject, optional, plus verb, necessary, plus object, optional, plus verb to be. Example, what we gave them was some cake. What we is the subject, gave, that's the verb, them, that's the object, was, that's verb to be, some cake. And a special kind of cleft sentences beginning with what takes the form what plus subject plus a form of verb to do plus verb to be plus to infinitive. Like, what he did was to sell his flat. What, subject, he, and then did, which is the past simple form of verb to do, and then what he did was, that's the past simple form of verb to be, to sell his flat. And we said that using the word to in this particular form or pattern or structure is optional, meaning that we can leave out to or we can omit it from the sentence. Right, so today's live stream is lesson number 2. We have done already in lesson 1, we have talked about inversion and how to employ inversion in your writing and in your speaking in order to formalize your writing or your speaking for situations that require formal English. And in today's live stream, we handled 3 topics, which were respectively how to use the word there at the beginning of sentences, then how to use sentences beginning with an introductory it, and then the last or the third section of the live stream was talking about cleft sentences. As you can see, all of the topics we have covered so far in the 2 lessons are advanced grammar topics. We will be also tackling some basic grammar lessons for beginners or for elementary learners of English, but I will be doing them alternatively with advanced grammar lessons so that we can cater to all the different needs and to fulfill all the different desires of the audience. So some audience are keen on advanced grammar because they have already improved their command of English to the level that they need some advanced grammar. Others are still at the beginning of the journey of learning English and they need some basic, some fundamentals, some basic English rules and fundamental grammatical rules. So we'll also be catering to those by providing them with live stream lessons that cover basic grammatical rules for them so we can satisfy all the needs and everyone gets happy. It's always a pleasure to meet you, whether I see you in a live stream like this or in a recorded video. At the end of the live stream, I hope that you have enjoyed it, and I'd like to ask you, if you like this content, to support me by subscribing to the channel, by interacting with the content via liking it, sharing it, and commenting. Please leave your comments down in the description or in the comments section in order to respond to them and to make any videos about any particular topics that you would like to have me covering. Here I come to the end of today's live stream. We have been talking for about 15 minutes and that's enough. I don't want to be too long with you. I don't want my live stream to be tedious. And I want to thank you very much for attentive listening. And I'll see you in our next lesson. So enjoy the rest of your day and goodbye.